Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Sister Sight. I am Jackie, and my lovely co-host with the most, co-hostess, mostess, second mostess, whatever is. You are whatever
It's
is.
zombie.
Yeah. So we had an intro song this time. The song is Sepia-Nated Rainbows by Diatom Deli. It is both of our favorite songs by her, and we totally have so much gratitude that she allowed us to use her song.
Yes, and you can find her Feel Sounds EP on Bandcamp, Spotify, and probably other places. SoundCloud, maybe?
You can also buy them directly from her shows whenever we're not trapped inside of our houses anymore.
Yes. One of the highlights of getting out of the house one day.
It's true. Seeing Deli play again will be a highlight.
Which I think actually she has a show, like a drone show coming up, a virtual show.
She does. She does. Yeah, she's doing a live stream on that. Let me see if I can find the information on that real quick.
Yes. Where did I put my teléfono?
Beep, 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 beep. That's not the right one.
Did you check the Insta?
Yeah, I have it. She'll be playing the drone set on Saturday, May 9th. It does not really give much. Oh, whoa, I swiped. Holy crap, you guys. All you have to do is swipe on your screen and get more information. The day and age we live in. So it's May 9th at 12 p.m. It will be a ambient and drone webcast. You can get it on 12hourlivedream.live. You can also find her on Instagram at diatom.deli for more information. She's also a lovely person who does lots of beautiful artwork and beaded work. So
Yes, songstress.
So today we're going to be talking about closedness and openness.
Yes, so I am going to start by talking about closedness and my understanding of it. So when you think of, well, for starters, when you think of openness, you think of vulnerability, you think of being susceptible, approaching things with curiosity and having this expanded awareness and being able to observe things without judgment. When I think of openness, that's what I think. So I believe that we all begin as open when we're children. And throughout life, there are things that happen that bring us out of that. So the earliest thing that you can think about would probably be like home environment and family and your peers when you go, if you go to public school, just things that you're exposed to along the way. They tend to like project these like other people's feelings and ideas onto you, and then you start to perceive yourself differently, and it affects how open you are. And I think that reaches a peak for like everyone when you get to puberty, because you are, you're struggling with self-identity. You're coming into this self-awareness of your body and your sexuality. Your sensitivity is heightened, and you compare yourself to others. And there's also like, I think this part of us that has like a survival kind of idea of like, I need to dominate others. I need to show my worth. I need to like outdo you or take the attention off myself, the negative attention off myself, which is where bullying comes in and stuff like that.
Yeah, I can understand that a lot because like, you're moving from childhood where from the moment you're born, you have to be open because you have to learn everything around you in order to be able to walk, in order to be able to talk, in order to be able to feed yourself. And then when you start hitting puberty, you have the surge of hormones and you are incredibly aware of your body. So your awareness shifts from being outside of you straight into you, and that would definitely help with closeness.
Right. And it also feeds into this, like the sexuality, like hormonal aspect of it is like, am I desirable? Like, would anyone ever want to kiss me? Or like, oh my gosh, I want to hold his hand, but like that's scary because I might get rejected. So like the fear of rejection really will close you up quickly. So I have a little story about when I was a kid, and it's like my earliest memory of just like feeling like so aware and like ashamed of myself. So we were in church and we were singing, and I always loved singing very loudly. And so whatever song it was, I'm like belting it out, and my mom's sitting next to me, and she like laughs at me because I was like so off. You know, and it was like a like you feel like, oh, I'm being laughed at. This isn't like, she doesn't like think I'm cute, she's like thinks this is funny. And so from that point forward, I would not sing in front of anyone. Like I was terrified. If I was like singing in my room and someone like walked in, I would freak out, which is funny because I'm like a natural born musical performer. So
Hmm.
it took a really long time for me to like build that back up and open myself back up to being that vulnerable and, you know, like expressing myself in that way. So that was a tough one for me. I played my first show when I was 18, and my mouth was dry. I was so nervous and so afraid of rejection and so afraid of hitting the wrong note. Whereas now I've finally learned like it's about the art. It's not about being perfect, you know. So that was a big one for me. So just moving on in closeness, a huge one that everyone can relate to is trauma, which
Mm.
creates a need for self-protection. So you find yourself closing off to like things that could potentially hurt you, and you allow fear to become your guide.
Mm.
And that's a really sad way to live, honestly.
I kind of actually beg to differ on that one
Go ahead.
for real, because like I think if you come to fear with openness, then fear can guide you much better. I actually, I have a lot of fear. I'm a person who lives in a fearful society. I'm a woman who lives in a fearful society. I come from a family of people, you know, I'm the youngest, so it's like, be afraid, which is
Hmm.
fine, whatever. So to me, fear has always been my guide, but only if you can listen to it with open ears.
Right.
Um, that's what bravery is listening to your fear and choosing to use it as a healing point. And from that, bravery becomes strength, but strength happens when you heal the trauma that the fear has just showed you you need to heal. So
Hmm.
living with fear as a guide isn't bad to me.
I
It's
guess what
pretty
like
good.
I guess there are different ways to like, when I say live by fear, I guess I mean more of like you're so afraid of getting hurt from your because of your past trauma that you have not dealt with, which is like it's not like it's not bad that you haven't dealt with it. Like you have time. That's what this life is for. But
Mm,
if you're just allowing your fear of because of your trauma to like guide you in every decision, I think fear can be healthy. And I think fear is like our gauge for survival. And I totally
mm,
agree with that. But I also think that it can hinder you. It can hinder you having new experiences or, you know, opening up to people or doing things that are good for you. So, and fear comes in many levels. I don't think anyone ever lives with like zero fear. I think that's
I
impossible.
I agree
But
with both of that
I,
fully.
yeah, I agree with what you're saying also. But just, yeah, that fear from trauma. And I think fear is also a barometer of like, have you dealt with things that have hurt you? Are you understanding why they hurt you or that it wasn't your fault? Or, you know, there's just a multitude of things that
Mm.
would be trying to tell you. Um, but yeah, when you allow fear to just close you off from anything, any new stimuli coming into you, I think that can be like really sad. So yeah,
It's a not a courageous way to live,
true.
which is also totally fine. If you guys aren't being courageous, hey, you can
No.
be one day.
Yeah, the things we talk about today, there is like no judgment from either side because everyone's on their own journey, and we know
Hmm.
that. But also, like you just mentioned, like living in this society that puts fear on us as women, like totally, that's my next point is the societal pressures and the
Mm.
way that the media has created this like unattainable standard and the way that women are treated and how we've, you know, our power's been taken for centuries. And so what we're doing is to be acceptable, we're trying to hide and discard the parts of ourselves that don't align with that standard. And So now we're allowing like the perception of others to rule ourselves. And that's, I mean, like we're all going through it constantly. You can't live in this society and not feel those things and not
Mm.
have to like constantly remind yourself that like this is just programming that's happening. This is not true for me and my soul and my spirit. Um, but that creates a lot of closeness because it also separates you from like your relationship with your body. Like it causes a lot of pain and shame. And I mean, it's exhausting, you
Because
know?
exhaustion can also lead to more closeness. Because to me, when I think of closeness, I think of like a muscle that's been tense for a really long time, like a knot in your back that you can't get to relax. So when you can finally relax that muscle, that's when the energy starts flowing right and better. So that's, I guess, really more of like a blockage.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that, if you're living in this tense place because of society and their weird ass norms, then you are going to be like super tense all the time and you're not going to be able to find a way to have openness because you can't really find an adequate place to relax that part of you,
Mm-hmm.
which is why
That makes sense.
communities are good.
Yes, exactly. And like, going back to the metaphor of the knot, it's like it takes pressure, but it's like a specific type of pressure and movement to like release these blockages. So I think there are people that come into your life that are here to serve that purpose for you and to put that pressure on you, whether it's negative or positive, to like release that for you.
Hmm.
And yeah, it takes bravery to open. Community is like the biggest influence. Making sure you feel safe and you feel loved and you feel grounded in your community is really important to help you open.
Hmm.
And knowing that when you do expose these parts of yourself that feel, like flaws, you're still going to be supported and loved. And it's not going to affect that. Which, like, going back to me performing music, I was performing for a very like tight knit music community who like fully embraced me, like, oh my God, badass on the piano, like we love you, we want to buy your CDs. And so it was like, even though I wasn't like the best, it was just the love that made me feel like, okay, I can do this. Like this,
We
I'm
still
living
do,
my
by the way.
truth.
We still
Yeah.
do want to buy your CDs.
If only I were making CDs still. Um, but yeah, it does take community. I think that's like one of the biggest things. It's not the biggest thing.
Hmm.
But yeah, so speaking on taking bravery to open, that's when we can get into like the levels of openness that I kind of arranged in my mind. So I'm just gonna give you like these broad levels, and then we can get deeper if you want to.
Yeah.
So I broke it up into three levels, and of course, people operate differently. So to some, these are going to be like in a different order, but I'm maybe thinking more on like the terms that I've come to in my mind. So for one, it would be your openness to the world, to experiences, to the physical, to the exploration of the existence in this like physical realm. So that would include trying new things, opening yourself up to other cultures, approaching nature with like a reverence and an openness. Um, and then when we move into level two, it becomes more about your connection and openness with other people. So friendships, even like a group setting, being emotionally available, intimacy, self expression, and letting people in. And then the third level is openness with yourself. And in my mind, this is like the deepest level of openness. So you're willing to admit your weaknesses and your strengths. You have an appetite for self growth. You honor what you want and what you need. You acknowledge the inner voice and your intuition, and you are open to healing. You're open to like facing these wounds and facing these traumas and diving deeper into them. And I think all of three of these are interconnected for to create like spiritual growth.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I I totally agree and like see that. For me, it's usually the opposite. I usually work with myself inside and then I reach out to the people around me. And then from there, I'm like, oh, okay, now I'm sitting here in the world. This is the
Mm-hmm.
world because I've done the work inside and now I'm seeing the work outside. But I also see that everyone is different and everybody has a process. And I also recognize that level one, two, and three aren't necessarily one, two, and three, but more of
Right.
like bulletin points because they
Right.
do interweave so well. They are totally all overlapping. Like, really, when you start to do any kind of work in the outer world, you're going to do work on the inner world. And through the work between the outer and the inner, you're gonna work with the people around you.
Mm-hmm.
So I like I I love your three levels of openness.
Thank you. And they're like a good place to just start with like a guide, guideline of how these things work. Um, but yeah, so I think those are my thoughts on closedness and openness and the way that I move through the world. And one other thing I wanted to talk about is expansiveness and the idea that the more you open, the more you fill with these experiences and this knowledge and this wisdom and this love. And then the more you open more, because once you've opened to a certain point, like you can't go back. You can't go back to the way that you were. Even if
Mm-mm.
you try, you already know better, you know? You
You'd
already know.
just be lying to yourself,
Yeah, and a
and you
lot of
know
people
it.
do. A lot of people do. But spiritually, you can't really go back.
Yeah.
So, and the idea that your spiritual capacity is infinite. So we are ever opening, we're ever evolving, we're always growing and learning.
But on the complete flip side of that, since we are striving for ever openness in this infinite reality, which you know I love infinity, um, and it goes both ways. So if you start to become more and more closed, you can actually begin to close yourself off in an ever more infinite closedness, which is kind of heartbreaking.
Yes. Which
Because it's
I heard someone say about a friend once, I'm not going to say names, but he said that guy is the most open-minded, narrow-minded person I've ever met because he thinks he knows so much about so many things. He's like such a dick. And that's like not what it's about, It's not to be better than everyone else. So, I always thought that was funny, but
it's
yes.
true. It's also very true. People can do that. It's we all have to remember and remind ourselves that we're on like this equal playing field,
Mhm.
which is, difficult sometimes. I'd like to go back and talk about the environment a little bit
Mhm.
because I think family environment does affect your closeness or your openness. Your peers definitely do. But I also want to talk more about like not resting, super being stressed out all the time, super tenseness that is closing yourself off. Not taking care of your body, just in general, also will end up closing you off. I had this realization like a couple of weeks ago. I'm in quarantine. I'm like, oh, I'm in quarantine. What am I going to do? I just feel like a fat, lazy bum. And then I was like, wait, I'm not a fat, lazy bum. I like moving my body, you know? And that's like fine if you are a fat lazy bum. I like being a fat lazy bum. But then I realized that the greatest act of devotion that I can have to source is to take care of my body. So when I'm not taking care of my body, I'm not fully devoting this body that I have that I view as a gift that was given to me very well. It's like kind of tarnished and a little rickety. But if I take care of it, then that is not only an act of devotion to source, but it is also an act of devotion to myself, which is
Mhm.
equal and comparable. I think I wrote down in my journal, think of your body as the greatest gift your lover has ever given you,
I love that.
and take care of it because
Mhm.
obviously your lover gave it to you.
Mhm.
So, those I think are the environments. Oh, also pollution, like hanging out in really heavily polluted areas where there's like not a lot of fresh air and like a lot of smoke or a lot of smog. I think that has a lot of stress on our body systems and it can contribute
Mhm.
to closeness. I also think like radiation can also do that.
Yes, like being around a lot of technology and electricity and yeah, totally.
Yeah. And so like I think it's not just, the people we put ourselves around. It's also the situations we put ourselves in or find ourselves in, like that's real. And I
Mhm.
think that the environments that play a role in openness are just as important to talk about, you know, because now we've talked about like, well, if I find myself sitting in a room full of servers all day and I'm eating poorly and, you know, I'm not surrounding myself with great people, I do feel closed,
Hmm.
you know.
And just
Because
to piggyback off of that, it's like I personally feel that when I do take care of my body, my energy is not working so hard on like digesting heavy food and like, repairing all these like broken tissues. It's more focused on like my mind and the flow of my thoughts and my like spiritual awakening. So it's like, yeah, the more you can like cleanse your body so that your energy doesn't have to work so hard on focusing on that, it's like the more open you can be because you have all this like extra energy, you know?
mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Environments that play a role in openness, I would say would be like safe community. Like I have a safe community with you, and
Hmm.
the vast majority of my friends, I would definitely consider that I have safe community with, which is great because I feel accepted. And because I feel accepted, I feel loved. So I can fully express my vulnerability. I can show you where I'm closed at so I can then work on opening it. It's
Hmm.
through witnessing us that we truly can transform the greatest. It's like, you know, I can change, but I really want you to know that I changed too. It's part of the ego,
Yeah.
and that's fine. I think time alone is also really good. People who don't spend time alone, like at all, often become unbalanced. I know this because I'm a person who, when I'm in a city area, I like ping pong around a whole bunch, mostly due to my living situation, but also because I like to be social. And when I'm in a city, I don't ever really feel like I'm alone, anyways. So when I'm
Hmm.
in places like the country or in nature, I feel alone. And it's like actual time for me to decompress, actual time for my energy system to reset and reboot
Right.
and cleanse itself,
Hmm.
which
And
is all.
I mean, a lot of people are afraid of that alone time. They're like afraid to like just face their own thoughts. I don't know.
They have a
Like
lot of
clingy people.
thoughts.
Yeah. But it's like, yeah, it's like the forever escapism. It's like you can escape through drugs and alcohol and food, or you can also escape through friendships and being social and all that. So,
It's all about distraction. That is all
yeah.
about, like, when you're escaping, you're distracting. When it's the same thing. If you're
Hmm.
trying to escape this moment, then you're going to be distracted from this moment. And like I believe that this moment is really the only moment in our existence that I'm constantly living through. So if I'm constantly trying to not be with myself, then I'm going to find ways to distract myself because then I won't have to process my emotions. Because the moment I'm left alone, the moment I'm not distracted or escaping, then I have to process them because they've been on hold since those emotions hit.
Right.
That's
And like,
how,
yeah, they stack up. And so the more you can like just get that piled down as it happens, or,
yeah.
make your alone time more frequent, then you can keep the stack down, keep the stress down.
Let's just breathe and move. It's gonna be okay. I think time in nature also really helps that. Like, if you can find time in nature alone, then it's like, pacha! I'm sorry, I just had a really random moment of a one random politician who did that one time. Pew! And that
Yeah.
was,
Who did that?
obviously he didn't win anything, so it doesn't matter, but, you know,
Oh my gosh.
we'll always remember you fondly as Pew! Politician man.
But yeah, like nature forces you to just slow down,
Hmm.
relax, shed the tension.
So, um, I think this is because energy is kind of like magnetized to each other. So, okay, well, let me blah really quickly so I can form a nice string of words rather than a hurried shift of stringing words. I know that a lot of open people who are always in paths, usually when they get around closed people, they feel themselves closing. And it's scary because they don't know what their emotions are versus who the other people's emotions are. And it's very difficult to deal with. And I think this is because when we come into contact with another person, the energy has to always be at a balance point. We talk so much about balance in any spirituality. When we come into contact with any other person, our energies will find a meeting place so that they remain balanced between us so that we can have open communication with the other person. So when a closed person comes to an open person, the closed person reaches up energetically without actually being conscious of it and brings the open person to a more easy sense for them. So they're closing the open person. But at the same time, the open person is reaching down, because we're looking at directions, I guess, and bringing the closed person up. And they'll do this until they find a place where they're both absolutely equal, which is great, I think, because like if you're around a lot of open-minded people and you are already an open person, you guys are just going to be like already on that level. But
Mm-hmm.
it's really difficult to deal with if you are a really open person or even just like a somewhat open person and you find yourself in a room full of really closed people
Mm-hmm.
because as an infinite source, you're going to be the one that they all turn to make all of their energies find that meeting place with you. And your energy will probably be pulled down lower so that they can find that meeting place and it all be equally balanced.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense. I actually have a question for you
Okay, cool.
regarding that. So, as an energy healer, and someone who easily perceives the energy of others, what is it like to feel into the energy of others, especially when they are closed? Do you feel more compassion for them? Do you tend to gravitate towards them as a helper?
That's a
Mm.
very good question.
Mm-hmm.
To be very honest with you, it depends on the person. It depends on how closed the person is. Sometimes I do gravitate to like very closed people, and when I sit with them and we like talk about their life or whatever, innately, because I am an open person, I bring them up to a much higher level because I can maintain my openness. Because,
Right.
I've worked on my energy field. So like if your energy field is a muscle, my muscle is toned.
Mm-hmm. So,
So
like
it's
boundaries, would you consider that
toning a
boundaries?
muscle. Yeah,
Yeah, right.
totally. Um, I do definitely feel compassion for so many things. So many things. But I can also step back from that and recognize that that person's situation, that person's pain, and that person's suffering isn't for me to feel, it's for me to witness and bear witness to. It's for me to see and be like, yo, do you need help with this? It's
Mm-hmm.
also not at all for me to be like, yo, you need help with this. Like, that is never, absolutely
No.
never the correct way to do that. They, it has to be explicitly permissive. Like, you have to have explicit permission in order to help somebody. Just why people get really weird questions from me sometimes. Like, hey, do you want to talk about this? Hey, do you need help with this? Hey, you can say no.
Mm-hmm.
Those are all things.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's sometimes it also depends on what I've been doing with my body and where I've been at with my energy field. Like if I've been living in my van for a month in a city and I haven't found time to ground and I haven't found time to spend alone or alone in nature better or with my art, things that are important to me to find
Mm-hmm.
myself and be with myself, then my energy becomes more scattered and less easy to reel back in and make it neutral. It's
Mm-hmm.
not it's either positive or negative. It's not really in between, and there's a lot of problems with that right there. But when I'm in these situations, I have found that it's a lot easier for me to think that somebody else's emotion is actually my emotion and forget a boundary.
Mm-hmm. That happens to me so often.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's okay. You're not alone.
Yeah. Well, my goal for this year was to work on those like boundaries, those energetic boundaries and that muscle as you call it. And I mean, and it's like you have to like catch yourself in the moment and just be like, wait, I feel that I'm doing this. I feel that I'm kind of feeding into this like energy around me, and I have to just, you know, find the limit of where I'm at.
Mm. So it's always a process as well. It's
Mhm.
never not going to be a process.
Right.
And the process goes from total unawareness to finally one day waking up and seeing this thing that you're doing in any regard and being aware of it and becoming aware of it. And then you will have a period of time where you're aware of it, but only in hindsight.
Mm-hmm.
Like you're just gonna go through your daily thing and then be like, oh no, I should have reacted this way. This is actually the way I wanted to react. And then you're gonna sit with that hindsight awareness for an amount of time.
Mm-hmm.
It's different for everybody, but it is always an amount of time. And then from there, you're going to have moments, more and more moments, where you realize in the moment that you need to behave this specific way. And this is also a turning point because you can choose to or you can choose not to. But you're going to have to keep choosing to in order to have the hindsight that's 2020.
Mm-hmm.
If that sentence made any relevant sense.
I think it did. Yeah. I'm
Very
with
cool. All right, tight, tight.
you.
But it's always going to be a moment of practice. Practice is so incredibly important, and I I don't do enough practice. I need to practice more. It's always going to be about practice.
Excuse me.
You're doing tight.
Ooh, yeah. I mean, every spiritual thing is a practice because you have to constantly work on it. But I
Mm-hmm.
think being aware is the first step.
Yes. Actually, there's that saying. I don't know who said it, so I can't give a good quotation for it. But everyone knows the saying. Oh, this really grinds my gears. But it's the saying that insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results.
Yep.
And that's not insanity, that's practice.
Mm-hmm.
That's what that is. And to have this dynamic in our society where we're like, if you do the same thing over and over again and expect different results, you're insane. Nobody wants to practice now because we don't want to be crazy. When
Yeah.
really doing the same thing over and over and over again and behaving in the exact same ways over and over and over again, that's crazy. That goes against the natural flow of the universe. The universe is constantly in flux and always changing, and therefore every single moment is always different, no matter how familiar it looks. There is some aspect to it that is different.
Mm-hmm.
And to try to make it into this fit thing of it being the same every time is insanity.
That's a good point. I never really thought about that quote in that way.
Yeah, I don't like that quote.
I mean, like, what does that even apply to? Because even if you're doing like a workout plan, you're going to do the same fucking workouts every week. And eventually you will get to a different, outcome. You're going to have
Exactly.
toned muscles. So, which same thing as spiritual muscles, toned and
Hmm.
spiritual muscles.
Yeah, get them good and thick.
She thick.
Thanks. I'm just kind of like rereading over these notes that I had. Like, what else was I going to say?
Yeah.
Oh, I do want to talk about negative and positive and neutral energy
Yes, please do.
because I think this plays a really big, actually like a really big thing in remaining open or remaining closed or being through the transition of closed to open or being through the transition of open to closed because we
Mm.
live in an infinite universe, therefore you can travel in absolutely any direction.
Yes.
So I'm going to start it like this. I feel pulled to start it like this. What we mean when we say centered, I'm working from a centered standpoint. Oh, that person is really centered. Oh, they're very grounded. It's not. they're speaking from a negative light or they're speaking from a positive light. It's that they have transmuted negative energy and positive energy into a neutral energy. So they are giving you feelings, emotions, they're giving you words, advice from a neutral standpoint, which is really cool because we live in a very weird, beautiful, wonky reality, right? And we ourselves are both masculine and feminine. Masculine is, I'm going to use air quotes, positive, and feminine is also air quotes, negative. And source is actually a mixture of the two, which would be neutral.
Right.
So when we say we're centering and grounding, we're actually taking these two that have been pulled out and separated from source and bringing them back together and making them neutral. So I think neutral energy is really, really important. I think also energy in its natural state is neutral and it can take on any characteristic that you want it to. So you can make energy neutral and you can also use neutral energy and make it either positive or negative. This is why words are so powerful because if I'm thinking negative thoughts all the time, then I'm going to be living in a negative place because all of the energy that I'm putting out is negative.
Mm-hmm.
Same with positive. Same with neutral. If I'm consistently being super neutral in my thoughts and my feelings and my emotions, my world will be neutral. I'm sorry, I'm gonna pause for a minute because I really want to talk about toxic positivity.
Oh my gosh, yes, please. Yes, please. Let's talk about it.
Because, like, toxic positivity is an incredibly very real thing. And positive, untoxic, I guess, untoxic negativity is also very real and very beautiful and does not get enough light.
Let's call it healthy negativity.
Healthy
Healthy
negativity.
negativity.
Healthy negative. I like that. It's healthy. We negative in a healthy way today. Nice. Yeah. So when we are creatures that are meant to live in balance, when we are out of balance, we will inevitably trip. We will inevitably fall. This is why balance is so incredibly important. Whether in our physical meat bodies or our energetical spiritual bodies, we have to have balance in both in order to fully walk in the world. If we are spending too much time in a negative state or in the darkness or working on our shadow and only doing that, then we have a bigger tendency to become cruel or mean. And it's like everyone's been through this. I really assume at this point in life that everyone's been through this. But that moment when you're talking to somebody and they're not listening to you and you just want to be like, ah, listen, like just shut up and listen. I'm sure people have that moment with me often. But it's like that. It's like because the negative dark part is our center of receptivity. If we're always in that, we can't really receive all the time because we're so overwhelmed with everything that we are receiving.
Mm-hmm.
And when we spend too much time in the light, we get so caught up in talking and not listening because darkness is receiving and light is the action in which we give to the dark. So when we spend too much time in the light, people tend to become fanatical,
Mm-hmm.
which I would like to now take this time to apologize because I listened to the podcast last time and felt that I was becoming fanatical at some points and was like, wow, I should really work on that. So this is my apology. I am sorry for becoming fanatical. It's not what I want to be.
It's just passion. You're seeping passion.
Oh, shucks. Well, don't make me blush. Jeez. But that's what toxic positivity is it's this need and this drive to constantly fix things or do things or talk about things and there's no room for hearing. So the people
Mhm.
who are sitting in constant darkness or a lot of darkness get really fed up with listening. And people who are always in the light or constantly in the light or always trying to be positive or saying things that, like just be happy all the time,
Yeah.
they lose sight of what it means to listen.
Well, it becomes like a flimsy kind of facade because it doesn't have like any like substance behind it. Because I
Hmm.
feel like true joy, there is the flip side is true misery. And if you haven't felt true misery, how in the world are you going to recognize true joy, right?
Hmm.
And it's like that friend that is always like, you're in distress and you come to them and you want to talk to them about it and they're like, everything's going to be okay. This is all good. Like just smile through the pain. And you're like, no, bitch, like I want to talk about it. I want to like get gritty and get in it and feel it and like learn from it and work through it. I don't want to just sunshine and rainbows.
Hmm.
Yeah,
It's not healthy.
it's not.
And there are people who are there, and that's fine.
Hmm.
Try nodding to be one of those people I don't want to be one. I also don't want to be somebody who is constantly listening all the time and not, and I have fear of that. So I
Yeah.
tend personally, and I recognize this. So obviously, I'm now in a specific, like, I am having moments now where I'm like, oh, I see that in the moment rather than, oh, I see that in hindsight over
Mhm.
this. So I am working on the process personally.
I mean, same. I feel like we're a similar type of person where we are very receptive and, we allow others to kind of bounce off of us, bounce their
Hmm.
light off of us. So, but that's why I love you so much because I feel like it's a more balanced connection, I love
Thanks.
you.
I love you too. I want to say something about gratitude because gratitude is incredibly important any way you slice the cake. Any way you slice that cake, it is an equal portion. That's because gratitude is neither negative nor positive. Gratitude is truly a neutral emotion. You can have gratitude for the sunshine and the daisies, and you can have gratitude that that guy just hit your car.
Hmm.
It's just harder to have gratitude because we usually get caught up in how shitty it feels to have your car hit. And like I totally get that. But,
Yeah.
you know,
So, tell me what you think of this thought that I wrote down. So, whether the emotion you are facing is a positive or negative emotion, the energy can still be positive, negative, or neutral. So, for
yes.
example, it's like let's say you're going through a really painful breakup, but it was codependent or abusive or not serving your higher self. So, it feels unbearably negative, but it's actually a positive flow of energy moving you in like a better direction.
Yeah,
So just because you're feeling negative things, that doesn't mean it's a negative energy. And I think a lot of
exactly.
people shy away from that, like pain, because it's hard. Of course, it's hard. No one wants to feel pain, but it's very important to feel pain. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Pain is how we grow. I mean, the Buddha said all life is suffering. And honestly, I have found that to be very true. All life is suffering. The whole reason we learn not to touch the hot thing is by touching the hot thing. And you know
right.
what sucks? Touching the hot thing. But if you tell me not to touch the hot thing, I don't know that experience for myself. So
Hmm.
I don't know if it's necessarily true. So I can't build upon my own foundation with it. So it's like, I mean, I can trust you that that thing's hot, but there's always going to be a part of me that's like, yo, just touch it. Just touch it. How do you know it's not hot? Because
Exactly.
I didn't have the
And
experience.
that's like a problem I have with religions is like setting these rules where it's like, do not do these things. When sometimes, I mean, some things you're like, yeah, I'm not going to kill anyone. Like, I definitely don't want to do that. But there are a lot of rules and guidelines where it's like, if you don't experience those things for yourself, how do you learn? You're just going to like take someone else's word for it. I don't
Exactly.
think you actually learned.
You didn't.
Like, obedience isn't always positive.
Mm-mm. No.
Yeah.
Even when your dog does it, it's not always positive. Saying. I mean, I think I really do believe that everything suffers in life. And I think that suffering, God, this is gonna make me sound crazy. Well, whatever. We're here
Mm.
now.
Say it. Preach.
I think that suffering is not only important, but I think that suffering is actually beautiful because it teaches you how to cope. It teaches you how to learn. It takes you from where you were and can bring you to who you are now. And who you are now is so incredibly important because it's the you that's now. And in the future, it's going to be even more different because you've gone through so much more suffering. I have this thing where I practice gratitude over my suffering. I pray over all of my food. And one of the things that I do in my head or out loud when I pray is I actually specifically said, thank you for all the great times. Thank you for all the good things. And thank you for all the bad things. Thank you for all the bad things that have ever happened to me. Because it's a neutral energy. And I do recognize that I didn't like that happening to me. And it doesn't necessarily make it okay that these things happen to me. But I can't change that they happen to me.
Mm.
I can change how I view the things that happen to me. That does never make some of those sufferings okay, ever. It doesn't make them right. It doesn't make them noble. It doesn't make them honorable. Some of the sufferings are just straight out horrible pieces of crap that still happened.
Mm-hmm.
But I do actually really like who I am now. And if I changed any one of those suffering points, I wouldn't be who I am. I wouldn't be where I'm at.
Mm-hmm.
So I try to be grateful as I can be to my suffering just as much as the good times. And I think learning how to react and respond and change your view on your suffering is the biggest lesson suffering has to teach us.
True. And also using what you learned from suffering to help others through their suffering. It's kind of like you are setting this example for everyone around you, even without realizing it.
That's what strength is.
Mm-hmm.
When we get stronger, we can hold others up too. That's beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, dude, I broke my leg, but you broke your leg. Hey, come on, let's lean on each other. We can walk just fine. I mean, not just fine, obviously. We're gonna have to find a third person who maybe has both legs so we can hop this fence to get away from these like rabid dogs, but we can still make it to the fence.
Exactly.
I think actually I read something recently about endurance and how everyone has like an endurance point where you can do something for so long and then you have to stop and rest. And then you do something for so long and you have to stop and rest. And I think that's incredibly important in the spiritual and emotional sense too. When trying to open your own energetical main channel into source, to remain open and maintain openness, it is a test of endurance until you build up the strength in that muscle. And it's super important to recognize that when you first start out, you're not going to have the endurance to do it for 5 hours,
Mm-hmm.
much less 2 weeks or a month or a year. The people who can do that have been working on flexing this muscle, this port inside of their body that source directly is feeding into, which gives us our electrical field, which is what makes us run. They've been working on opening that and expanding that and holding that open for probably more than one lifetime. And that's why they can do it so well. Like the Dalai Lama can do it every single day for the rest of his life
Mm-hmm.
because he's been doing it for so many lifetimes.
Yeah.
And the Dalai Lama suffers. He still has suffering. He never not doesn't suffer. His whole situation is like I don't really want to talk about it because I probably cry a bunch about it because I really like the Dalai Lama
Mm.
a lot. And he like, his people are fucked.
Yeah.
That he's living in exile. The Chinese government does not know where he is at. Otherwise, he would who knows what would happen to him. He would probably be taken to a re-education center, which is like, what the fuck is that? I'm not, that's a whole different conversation.
Torture chamber.
Yeah, right?
What?
Like, yeah. But let's not get super political,
Let's
Jackie.
not. Let's not.
Pure!
Oh,
Yeah. So I think that's one of the main points of meditation isn't to like, it is definitely helps you clear your mind. Clearing your mind clears your energy system out. You know, it helps you release the tensions on the emotions that you haven't fully processed yet. It refreshes you and renews you, but it also helps you hold that energy channel open longer. And if you know, anyone who doesn't know who's listening to this, if you begin meditating, you're not going to sit in a seat and meditate for 2 hours.
no, you're not.
I
It's
challenge you to do that
impossible. I
if
say it's
you've never
impossible.
done it. Yeah, like I can't do it now. Okay, sometimes I can do it now. Sometimes I cannot do it now. It's all still a work in progress. It's still practice for me. It's
Hmm.
still practice for the people who've been doing it for, so many years because it's always work to do that. But that work expands your muscle, your source muscle. Let's call it source muscle. I like
Oh,
that.
I like that. Yeah.
Your source muscle. Mm. It expands your source muscle and it makes it stronger. And the stronger it gets, the easier it is to hold open and stay open and remain open. And if you have a really strong source muscle, when you get around closed people, they have enough energy to meet you at your level without you going down to theirs.
Hmm.
Because your muscle's like, oh, I can take this weight. Ha, ha.
Yes.
So that's my thoughts on it.
Yeah. Interesting stuff. I love it. So, one more question for you. What are your regular practices concerning openness, especially when you feel very tense and like energetically closed off? Which I think we
Ooh,
talked about a little, but like what motivates you to get in back into that practice?
several different things. Usually, they're usually different. It's all constantly changing. I don't have a set form of meditation. I have several set forms of meditation that when I'm like, oh, I'm going to meditate, I'm going to do it like this. One of them is I imagine my body. I don't imagine any features. I'm totally featureless. I mean, I've got like boobs, but they don't have like nipples or anything. I don't even look at my face. I'm just like an outline. But my
Yeah.
outline is pure gold energy. It's pure golden light. And absolutely everything around me, as far as my mind can make it, is void, black. It's totally black. I've actually, from that meditation, I've had some crazy intense experiences. I do another meditation where I imagine this light inside of me, usually starting at my heart. It's also gold, and it comes out of me slowly. It fills me up and comes out of me slowly until it reaches the edge of my aura, and then it keeps expanding until it's as big as the world, and it keeps expanding until I can't make it expand anymore because it's become black. And I sit with this expanding void, the expanding blackness, until that becomes a really tiny white gold dot at the center of my chest. So it's like a macro, micro kind of
Wow.
imagination.
Yeah.
Sometimes in my head, I'll go for walks. I will imagine myself walking down a forest path. I will meet creatures in that forest path. Sometimes I work with my spirit guides in this manner. That's more of like a journey kind of situation. Usually I do those when I'm like looking for answers to
Hmm.
things. Sometimes this is like one of my favorite ones to do, and it's actually changed my vision a little bit. Not in like I have sharper vision, but like I actually can see colors more. clearly from doing this. But I'll close my eyes and I will try to imagine every single thing around me exactly how I closed it. But it won't be filled with colors. It'll just be a rainbow overwash of tiny little rainbow particles everywhere. Because I um, I work with the rainbow particle a lot in my own personal practices because I see them now. I see them everywhere,
Mm-hmm.
everywhere. It's actually amazing. It's how I know 100% beyond doubt that we are all connected because to me, we are all literally just rainbow particles. Because I can look at a leaf and see the rainbow particle. I can look at my hair and my skin. I can look at yours. I can look at fur. I can look at cars. I can look at pieces of metal. I can look at pieces of wood. If I'm looking at it long enough, I can see the rainbow particle.
Mm.
And it's super weird to tell the world that I can see rainbow particles.
But it sounds like a beautiful way to see the world
It
and
is
like the
absolutely.
connectedness of everything.
I mean, it's my favorite thing in the whole world to look at. If you ever see me outside on my belly or just giggling or just being in the sunlight looking at something, you just come over and let me try to show you the rainbow particles because that's exactly what I'm looking at. That's it. I also utilize my physical body. So I do yoga, I like running, I like moving my body, I like remaining strong, I like climbing trees. When I do these things, I try. Sometimes I succeed and sometimes I fail, but I try really hard not to think about anything other than what it feels like to my body to move, to move
Mm-hmm.
my body in this way. Like if I'm holding a pose, I think like, well, this is how my arms feel and this is how my fingers feel, this is how my toes feel. Just checking in to make sure everything feels feely.
Mm-hmm. Like putting
Sometimes,
your awareness into each facet of your bodies. It's
and
important.
then at the end of that, trying to bring that awareness into one fullness of it. So I also work with dualities in that way. I recently got into working with expanding darkness from my center and then I mean I guess that it's very similar to the one I just said earlier, but like working to expand darkness and then working to expand light and then working to expand darkness and working to expand light, except it only goes to my actual aura field.
Mm-hmm.
And then sometimes I'll imagine like my aura field being like really dense and really dark, and that's really protective for me. um, we can totally get into this in another one if you want, because like I actually have a lot to say about like how I think it's really protective of people with lights and why a lot of people with like really bright lights don't have that protection is because they don't have a dark shield
Mm-hmm. Yes.
around them. But it's I have a lot I can say about that.
That's probably another
Yeah.
episode.
Yeah. Look forward to that one, guys. We're gonna get weird and wacky with dark entities and nether realms and blackness and rainbow people, all that stuff.
Can't wait.
That was so chalant.
Can't
Are you sure you
fucking wait.
can't?
No, really. It'll be exciting. Yeah, I mean, I find that definitely bringing your mind and your body to the same place is really important for me to remain open. So, like, exercising, stretching is huge. Um, Sex, honestly,
Yeah.
it's like a way to do that. And meditation, of course. And then doing meditations where you're actually not trying to do like not trying to blank it out and make it clean slate, but more like observing and absorbing what's around you and like doing like a sound meditation. Like I'm going to close my eyes and listen to every little nuanced sound around me, stuff like
Yeah.
that to bring you really into the present.
Yeah, that
Because
also
I,
increases your awareness of your sensory organs of sounds and smells and things
Mhm.
like that.
Yeah, exactly. Totally. Because I don't know, I vibrate in a very emotional place and it's easy for me to like slip into memory or slip into my like recycled feelings. So I have to like remember to like no, bring it back to the present, bring it back to your body.
I feel that.
Um,
I also do walk barefoot a lot, and anytime that I get the chance, I lay on the ground as much as I can with my body And when I do that, I usually when I'm laying on the ground, I like looking at the clouds, obviously, but I also take a moment to like imagine our energy exchange, like between me and the earth, because there is an energy exchange. And
Mhm.
walking barefoot for so many years has definitely, I think, helped me literally ground. And it also makes me become more present and aware because, like, yeah, you try walking someplace and not being aware of your feet are if you're barefoot. You
Yeah,
can't.
totally.
You can't. If you do, you're gonna step on a thorn. Ask me how I
Mhm.
know. Thorns and paws happen.
Mhm.
I also like going to bodies of water and sitting with it, and once again,
Yes.
allowing my mental scape to like flow with the sound and just put my thoughts and emotions literally in the creek or the water and see them
Mhm.
wash away. If I can't do that, I totally 100% love a good bath.
Yes, totally. It's like working with each element in its own way. Like, when you sit by a fire, you feel that certain energy, or when you sit by water, you feel that, or on the earth, or there's like a windstorm, you feel that.
Yeah.
In all the different ways you can experience it. That's really good for just kind of cleansing and opening, releasing. Yeah.
Thanks to the elements, we can be whole.
Mm,
Well, we're about at an hour-ish.
yeah.
hmm
I mean, I feel good about it. Is there anything else you want to talk about?
I think that was a pretty cohesive amount of information that I feel good about that. I'm just gonna say I feel good about that. I feel good
Yeah,
about that.
I do too. I do too. I feel great about it.
If you guys would like to talk about your stories of openness or closeness, we would love to hear them. Reach out to us in any way possible. If you want to know more or have questions, we also both love answering those things. I mean, our both of our journeys is so solidly stripped on like, oh, we have a question, let us find this answer to it. So if you have an answer, or hey, if you have an answer, give it to me. I'll give you a question. That sounds super fun too, right? Like, what's sticky and no, that's actually a question. Frog. That's my answer.
But yeah,
Yeah.
feel free to reach out at any time. And I think we can put our contact info in the show notes.
Oh, tight.
I believe we can do that.
You
So,
guys, listeners, dear podcast listeners, we are figuring out how to be modern. We
one
understand how
step at
things.
a time.
That's true. Yep.
Yes, well, blessed Beltane, everyone. It's such a beautiful day here in Nashville where I am, and I'm definitely going to go play outside and pick some flowers. So,
Yeah, I'm in North Alabama and it is gorgeous. It's been gorgeous all day long. I'm gonna go freaking dance. I'm actually probably gonna go build a bonfire after this and dance around it all night long while I'm with my
love
parents. They're gonna
it.
be like, "What the fuck are you doing?" And I'm gonna be like,
Come dance with me.
and then I'll like witches cackle and they'll be like, "Oh, she's just being her."
Doing her thing.
Yeah. You want a bowl of ice cream, honey? Yes, please. Actually, that sounds great. So yes, enjoy the beautiful day. Happy Beltane. Thank you so much, Zanti, for being here and talking to me.
Thank you for being here with your beautiful face makeup on.
I tried
Shy
today.
cloud queen.
I tried today. Okay, well, as always, we're here for you.
Peace out, gang.